What is up, everybody, and welcome back once again to the channel. And my Kansas City Chiefs are Super Bowl champions. What a game it was last night. So happy that my Chiefs were able to come out on top. As many of you know, I am a Chiefs fan. And man, it was just such a. It felt twice as good as the Super Bowl they won a few years ago. I mean, it was just awesome. And yeah, I mean, the Chiefs are Super Bowl champs. Patrick Mahomes is continuing to cement his legacy. And I think you can already make a legitimate argument that he is a top five quarterback of all time. I would even make the argument a top three quarterback of all time. Two Super Bowl in his first 5 years as a starter, two Super Bowl wins, three Super Bowl appearances, five AFC Championship appearances, two Super Bowl MVPs, two league MVPs, five Pro Bowls, and numbers where he leads his position in almost every statistic. This guy is on the greatest start to a career we have ever seen. The Chiefs are, pushing forward for that dynasty label. Can you call them a dynasty already? I would say yes, not on the same level of the 1970s Steelers or the 1980s 49ers or the 1990s Cowboys or the 2000s and 2010 Patriots. I wouldn't put it on that level, definitely a notch below those, because I think to be a real long term dynasty, you need three Super Bowls, but they have two, but they've been to three. They've ruled their conference for this 5 year period. I think you can call them a dynasty. Not on that same level, though, but it is a dynasty. But yeah, I mean, awesome win for the Chiefs. A lot of things to take away from that game. Obviously, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles left everything they had on the table. Hurts in particularly did, rushing for three touchdowns, a Super Bowl record. Just a heck of a game, man. And you know, I'm just so glad to have witnessed that and seen my team come out on top of that. That was really a surreal experience. But um, in this video, I want to go through each team and kind of give my biggest takeaways for them, and basically heading into this off season and how this season went, if it was a success or not a success for each individual team. And I'm gonna go division by division. So let's begin. Um, the first team I'm going to be going over is Buffalo Bills, who had a lot of hype coming into this season. Obviously, they were considered the favorite to win it all, and they didn't even make it to the conference championship. Obviously, it was a good season for the Bills, but I think this was a season of Super Bowl or bust for them, and to come up short, well, more than short, the way they did, I think is very, very disappointing for their fan base. Um, and I think you can raise the questions of, has this team peaked? Is there really any reason to believe this team can get any better? I think they're still going to be a tough team next season and for the years to come, but I don't know if they're on the same level as the Chiefs, if anybody is. I don't think they are a true challenger to the Chiefs. And I just think Josh Allen is not on the same tier of Patrick Mahomes. I don't even know if he's on the same tier as Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts. For the Dolphins, it was definitely a strange year. They made that big off-season trade for wide receiver Tyreek Hill, and that definitely was a big splash move, and it paid off. He had a heck of a season. They gave up a lot of draft capital, but I think it was worth it. They finished with a 9-8 record, which is kind of where I personally felt they would finish, around 8-9, 9-8. But I think this is a team that if things would have, not if a couple things gone their way in terms of injuries, maybe they could have finished 10-7, 11-6. They were in a lot of close losses, and injuries also really derailed them, and it derailed them in the playoffs. I think this team definitely has a promising future, but obviously this season, I think the Dolphins feel that they didn't ever really hit their full potential during this year, and I think they feel like they left a bit on the table there. But definitely Tua proved himself as, okay, I can be the starter for this team at least for next year. Obviously, he had some bad moments, but I mean, I think he is still the starter for this team next year. The Patriots are up next, and obviously this season they did not make it to the playoffs. Similar to the Dolphins, a pretty up and down year, but I think the bottom line is what this team needs to do going into this offseason is get weapons for Mac Jones. I mean, he needs weapons. He needs. Mac Jones is not the kind of guy that is going to is going to be able to make it work with whoever he's got. He needs some help, and if they do that, I think they can be a successful team, and I think they can compete with the Dolphins and even compete with the Bills. The Jets, final team in the AFC East. They obviously a lot of young rookies on this team. I think this season was not a failure if you look at what they were hoping for from the beginning. The rookies showed out and they played very good teams, very tough, and won some big games. But I think if you look at it from where they were in the middle of the year, this team looked like it was for sure going to make it to the playoffs, and then to finish 7-10 and finish on a long losing streak, that definitely is not the way they expected it to go. But at the end of the day, Sauce Gardner won Defensive Rookie of the Year, and Garrett Wilson won Offensive Rookie of the Year. You can't complain about that, and I think the difference in this team winning some of those tight games was the quarterback position. I think they need to go out and get a veteran quarterback, which they are in the market right now, according to reports to do. Moving on to the AFC North, the Bengals definitely bounced back from that Super Bowl loss, as I did not expect them to do. I thought the Bengals were going to have a rough 2022 season, but they were able to bounce back, but it's still pretty tough for the way their season ended. A team that you felt that you have been able to get the best of the 3 previous times, and then you come up short like that and don't reach it back to the Super Bowl. It's definitely got to hurt if you're the Bengals. But I think going into this offseason, they really just need to make an effort to make that offensive line better and beef up their defensive front even more so. The Baltimore Ravens. This was a team that I was pretty high on coming into the year, but some injuries and just not great play by Lamar Jackson when he was on the field. This team did limp into the playoffs and almost pulled out the win against the Bengals in the wild card. But, obviously reports saying that they're going to franchise tag Lamar and then trade him. It's right now a mess in Baltimore, and there's really not much more to say in it. And I don't think it was a successful season in their eyes. I think in their eyes they were a Super Bowl contender, and to not win their division and be a wild card exit is not how they envisioned this to go. Then the Steelers, Kenny Pickett, young quarterback, he showed some great moments. I think he is their guy of the future. And they have a solid roster. They got good receivers. They got Najee Harris. This team is actually pretty set roster-wise. I think it's just a matter of, starting to perform and getting it done next year. I don't think there's much that they need to do with this roster. Sure, maybe help out a bit more on the offensive line, but overall, I think this team is set to compete in the AFC North. The Browns, obviously Deshaun Watson came back late in the year. I think this season went as the way they planned. I still think they felt they could be a playoff team, despite having Brissett as the starter for the first 12 games. And I think they also wanted to see a bit more of a jolt with Deshaun Watson to the team, which it just really wasn't there. But we'll see how Deshaun Watson fares after a full off season with this team and not missing 12 games. But obviously a lot of question marks in Cleveland moving forward. And I think Kevin Stefanski could be entering the hot seat in 2023. Moving on to the AFC South, the Jaguars, they won their division. This was definitely a successful season for them. This was their second year with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. Doug Peterson, his first year as the coach, and to turn around from being a team that had back-to-back number 1 picks in the draft, meaning the worst team in football back-to-back years, to winning their division and winning a playoff game it definitely was a successful season for them. And a lot of these teams I could go even deeper with, but now I don't want to spend too much time on each team. The Titans, definitely not the way they envisioned their season, but the way I envisioned it for them. I just did not think this team would be able to keep it going. Ryan Tannehill going out late in the year, but this team was spiraling out of control before Tannehill even got injured, and I think there's legitimate question marks at quarterback. I don't think Malik Willis is the answer. I don't think they should go another year with Ryan Tannehill, so we'll see what they do there. The Colts, obviously, a pretty ugly year for them as well. This was a team that I expected to be a dark horse playoff team, and they weren't even that, and then some. It was just a pretty ugly season for the Colts, and I think it may be time to just go out and draft a quarterback because they've been trying to bring in these veteran quarterbacks the last few years. First, it was Rivers, which kind of worked out, but then he retired. Then it was Carson Wentz, didn't work out. Now this year it was Matt Ryan / Nick Foles. Neither of those obviously worked out. I think it's time to go and draft a quarterback, especially with a new regime coming in at the head coaching position. The Texans, obviously, I would say, even though they're not getting the number one pick, I would say they were the worst team in the NFL this year. They were able to compete in some games, but it's what was expected. I mean, this was a very undermanned roster. That's not an NFL roster. That's not an NFL roster. If you really look at it, it's just a lot of work to do with that team, and hopefully they can get it going in the right direction at some point. AFC West, the Chiefs obviously touched on their Super Bowl victory. This was a year that a lot of people counted them out, saying that they were in a mini rebuild, and they go out there and win the whole thing, and cement themselves as the top dogs. And I couldn't be more proud of this team as a Chief fan. The Chargers. I think they really felt they had a shot at an AFC West title this year, and they didn't do that, but they did make it to the playoffs for the first time in the Brandon Staley / Justin Herbert era. But that 27-0 lead definitely leaves a bad taste in their mouth. And it's really hard to pinpoint a weakness on this roster. It's just a matter of they need to start executing, the games that they should win. The Raiders, I think it's an end of an era coming. And with the Raiders, I think obviously Derek Carr's leaving. He's refusing to take a trade. They're going to end up cutting him. There's no way he's on the roster next year. Will they draft a quarterback? Will they go out and sign a free agent or trade for one? We will find out sooner or later. But I do know there is a lot of playmakers on that team. Davante Adams, Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, one of the better offensive trios on paper. It's just a matter they need someone who can play quarterback there at a high level, and that team can be a contender. And they definitely also need to fix up their defense a bit. The Broncos, this was nothing but a disappointing of a season. I think, I personally felt coming into this year that this was a team that was going to have some growing pains, but they would still be solid and go 10-7, 11-6, but that there would be growing pains with it. But this was growing pains to a whole new level. This was beyond growing pains. Obviously, they fired Nathaniel Hackett. He didn't even make it through the whole year. And now they brought in Sean Payton, which I think is definitely a good hiring. And we'll see how him and Russell Wilson fare together next season. But, I think Russell Wilson has lost his control of the Broncos, because I think when he came here, came to the Broncos, he was hoping that he could be kind of like Brady was in Tampa. Wilson wanted to be the guy making decisions about personnel and things of that nature, but I think he's lost that privilege, and he can't complain about it because of the play he had during this 2022 season. Moving on to the NFC conference, first conference, NFC East, starting with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles had high expectations coming into this year, and they obviously more than reached them. They went above this. I don't think anyone was expecting a 14-3 dominant season and a Super Bowl appearance. Definitely a successful season for them. Obviously, once you're in the Super Bowl, It doesn't matter what your expectations were, you want to win it. It feels like a missed opportunity. But this team, I think, will be a powerhouse for the next few years. The main question with me for them is, will this Super Bowl loss affect them moving forward psychologically? I don't think it will. I think they have a good coach. I think they have a good leader in Hurts, and I think they will get through it. And I think they will be back next year playing good football like they were this year. Dallas Cowboys up next, and it's a disappointing season for them. I know they had a good regular season, a solid regular season. They even got a playoff win, but not reaching it to at least the NFC Championship game is definitely a disappointment, and it's just starting to become the joke. And I think they really need to sit down and realize, okay, this bunch, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, when is this team really going to step up? Do you really have the faith in these guys to get it done at this point? I don't know. I think there's a lot of people in the hot seat entering 2023 for the Cowboys, and one of them is Dak Prescott, which I just don't understand why they're sticking with him for another year. I think they need to go in a different direction. The New York Giants are up next, and the Giants had one heck of a season, a lot of wild wins. I think that beatdown they got to the Eagles in the divisional round definitely leaves a bad taste in their mouth. But what you got to realize is this is a team that was very undermanned in the roster due to injuries. But coming into the year, I was saying that I do expect this team to improve, even if the record isn't amazing, which the record was pretty good. But I did expect them to improve because they brought in such a good coaching staff with Brian Daboll, who won Coach of the Year, then Mike Kafka, who was the offensive coordinator, and then Wink Martindale, who was the defensive coordinator. So it was a successful season for them, and I think Daniel Jones does deserve to come back next year and see what he can do. He earned my respect in that wild card win over the Vikings, where he put his body on the line and put his team on his back at times on some of those third down conversions. Daniel Jones definitely earned my respect this season. Washington Commanders, their first year with the Commanders name, there was some hope there in the middle of the season there that they were going to make a run at the playoffs, but it kind of didn't turn into anything, and they're going to be looking for a quarterback this offseason. Or is Sam Howell the guy to move forward with? We will find out. Minnesota Vikings up next, and for a team that had such a impressive regular season, some would even argue one of their best regular seasons in their franchise's history, and a lot of memorable moments, including the biggest comeback in NFL history when they were down 33-0 to the Colts. For as great as the season as it was, to lose at home in that wild card game against a team that you are better than and more talented than, just definitely hurts this team. And I just wonder, it seems as of right now that they are going to stick with Kirk Cousins again next year, but I think they need a different guy to get him over the hump. I think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. I do, and I don't blame him for the loss against the Vikings. There were some drop passes, and overall their defense did not play very well, but I do think if they really want to go to the next level, they may need to make a change at quarterback, if it seems unfair. Next up is the Detroit Lions, who just missed out on the playoffs, but it definitely was a successful season for them. They were coming off of a pretty rough 2021 season, and to finish with a winning record and beating the Green Bay Packers twice, their arch nemesis, and beating the Vikings one time, and then also beating the Bears both times they played them. It was a good season for them. It definitely was. And for that 1-6 start to finish 9-8, pretty impressive. And I think they just need to keep building forward with this roster they have. They have something special brewing in Motown. Next up is the Green Bay Packers, who you did figure there would be a bit of a drop off with the loss of Devontae Adams, but I did expect this team to still win their division, and they did not. The Packers were far from winning their division, finished with the losing record of 8-9, and even when they had a chance to make it in the playoffs, Aaron Rodgers, as usual in the big moments, folds. But definitely not a successful season for the Packers, and I think going into this offseason, they're going to trade Aaron Rodgers, get as much draft capital or players they can get for him, and build around Jordan Love, finally. The Bears, I think the only positive for them this season is that they got out of this season is that Justin Fields is their quarterback of the future, but that's pretty much all they got. But thankfully for them, they got the number one overall pick in this draft, and they got a lot of cap space to spend in this offseason. So we will see what they do with it. This offseason can, determine what the future, the next 5, 6, 7 years will look like in Cheetown with Justin Fields running the show. Moving on to the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady's obviously retired. It'll be interesting to see if they hit the complete reset button and let go a lot of their guys, or will they get a quarterback and try to build around him. Keep what they have around him and just plug him in and hope they can continue where they left off with Brady. And I don't know. We'll see what they do. And another big question mark is Kyle Trask, the rookie that they drafted in the second round in the draft last year. Will he be the guy? I think he deserves a shot. You drafted him pretty high, and he had a pretty good college career. I think you should say, why not? Give this guy a shot before you go and make a move. I don't think there's too many teams. I don't think the Packers would be willing to trade Aaron Rodgers to the Bucs anyway, even if that's the guy they're eyeing. So I just think that give that young guy a shot and see what he can do. You drafted him high, might as well give him a shot. Carolina Panthers, I think they're going to hit the complete reset button. I think they're going to trade away a lot of their pieces. Complete rebuild offseason coming up for them. The Saints might be a similar situation. Jameis Winston obviously never returned from that injury. Did not look good when he did play. We'll see what they do. They may be going out to get Derek Carr, but we will see what they do there. I think that's another team that could be hitting the reset. The Falcons, they're a team that definitely had a impressive start to the season, and then it kind of unraveled. But I do think that Desmond Ridder is not the guy. I do think they should go out and get a free agent or draft someone, trade for someone. But I don't think Desmond Ridder's the guy. And this team does have some good, offensive weapons there for whoever does come in. And the young player in Drake London, Cordell Patterson, and then Kyle Pitts when he returns. So we'll see how this team handles their quarterback situation. Moving on to the NFC West, the final division. 49ers, one of the most strange seasons, I think. Definitely a great year for them, that 13-4 record, won a couple of playoff games, but I think not finishing out on top definitely hurts, or at least not reaching the Super Bowl. I think in their minds, they believe that they were the best team and that they just kind of got dealt a bad hand there by the football gods with all these injuries to their quarterbacks, and then in particularly their Brock Purdy. Obviously, there's a lot to get into with a lot of these teams, but the 49ers have a lot of issues going into this offseason, or not issues, but question marks. What are they going to do with the quarterback position? And it's very hard to tell right now what will Brock Purdy's availability be, and if he is ready to go, do you go with him? You go with Trey Lance? In my opinion, I think Purdy is definitely the guy. I wouldn't bring someone in from the outside. Roll with Purdy next season if he's playing. I think the Garoppolo thing is dumb, but it's a tough situation there in Santa Clara. The Seahawks, this is a team that was expected to finish last in their division and win. Some people were saying may have been getting the number one pick this April in the draft, but they were a very competitive team, and not only that, they made it to the playoffs. Very impressive season for the Seahawks. Very well done, coached by Pete Carroll and Geno Smith. Basically rewriting his career and resurrecting his career and proving that he can be a starter in this league. We'll see if they decide to keep him. Next up, the Los Angeles Rams, who were the reigning Super Bowl champs, probably one of the worst, following years after a Super Bowl win I've seen. But, the Rams, I think they'll get back on it next year. I think, a lot of injuries hit and just, a lack of, replacement during this offseason, I think, with the offensive line. But I do think this team will be good next year. I don't think they'll be on the same, Super Bowl champs. I don't think they'll be that, but I do think they will be a tough team next year and will be back to being relevant. And then last but not least, the Arizona Cardinals, who fired Cliff Kingsbury. They got a lot of question marks. The new regime at head coach. Kyler Murray will not be able to go at the beginning of the year. A.J. Green retired. J.J. Watt retired. DeAndre Hopkins may get traded. That team is in flux right now, and it's really going to be tough to manage that storm that they got going on there in Arizona. Definitely a disappointing season. Not only did they not have a good year and miss the playoffs, they just completely collapsed, only getting 4 wins the whole year. Pretty tough scene in the desert, and it will be interesting to see how they handle it from there. But, a heck of a season, awesome season in the NFL. Chiefs finish out on top as the champs. Let's go Chiefs. But, comment down below what you guys think, your thoughts on all this. And other than that, I'll see you guys next time.